Good morning, Don. I just started everything.
Can you hear me?
I can. How are you doing this morning,
Very
Don?
outstanding. Let's see, mute my audio.
Perfect. Well, we got some people coming on in. I know it's early this morning, guys, but we wanted to make sure that we could get on and off before work started too much for you guys. So that's why we did it at 8 a.m. So for those of y'all not on the East Coast, very early good morning, as it's going to be like 6, 7 a.m. for most of y'all, but it'll still be great to see y'all here.
I don't know how to get my camera working here. What's going on?
Let's see. It's interesting. I don't know what's going on there.
Speaker view. I mean, you just see my pictures at all?
That's all I see, Don. And the video camera isn't letting you turn it on down in the bottom left-hand corner as normal.
Start video, yeah, you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
I have not stopped it, so how do I do that? Huh.
That's what it is. Host.
How about we do that? Is it letting you do anything now?
There we go.
Hey, I don't know what was going on there, but
It's all better. Now, how do I get to my screen so I can upload the PowerPoint? I don't see that at the bottom here.
should be able to reduce the screen there. We got everyone still coming in slowly. I know it's early, so I know that we're going to have people coming in probably for the first few minutes, guys. Don's got a great program for us today. He is so good about helping us and going through and talking about productivity. So I know he's going to provide a ton of information to y'all there. I'll let Don kind of lead everything there, but as always, you know that I'm a huge fan of having y'all ask questions, and I'm sure Don is going to be very receptive to y'all asking plenty of questions there too. So as always, feel free to chat in questions that should be open. One thing that I always like to ask when we're doing these webinars is make sure that you're not just chatting to the panelists, chat to the panelists and attendees. So in that chat box, change that to box to panelists and attendees. That'll be great because then all the attendees get to see your questions, not just me and Don. Or just go into the Q&A box and we'll keep our eyes open in there. Don, did you get your screen figured out so you can share the PowerPoint?
I believe so. In fact, let me see if I can bring it right up now.
Perfect.
Is that on the screen now?
Not yet. Let me see
Okay.
here.
Have you,
Sorry, guys, 8 a.m. in the morning and the computers don't want to be up either. So
so how do I get that on my screen? Did you make me a host?
I did. Should be down right at the bottom, the share screen green button. If you click that, you should be able to share your PowerPoint because you've got permissions to share there.
Okay, I don't see share screen on there. What am I missing here?
Interesting.
Oh, there we are, share screen. Okay, got it.
Yay, there we go.
You gotta love this technology.
Oh, perfect. Well, Don, we are 5 minutes into the hour. I think that we'll probably still have some stragglers coming in, but I think it'll still be about time whenever you're ready to get us kicked off here.
I am indeed. Can you see me?
Yes, I can.
All right, that's
Everybody, can
good.
y'all see the screen? Any issues here, guys? Perfect. And good morning, Kara. Great to see you on here with us. And I guess I'll see you again on Thursdays, but it's good to see you directly with me. Perfect. Okay. So no issues. Looks like everyone's good, Don. So whenever you're ready.
All right, let's get going. Let's get going.
So Don is a great friend and a great consultant that we have worked with for a while now, and he is great at helping people to really prioritize and do great with productivity. He has been working in trades earlier on in his career, and he's worked in the accounting and legal field along with all of this stuff. And he's got some great insights that I know that you guys should probably benefit very well from today. So Don, I'll let you kind of go from there and let me know what you need.
Thanks, James, and thanks to you and my friends over there at Waterford Business Solutions and inviting me to share this. We're here to talk about you all and how you all can get a 26-hour day. And the reality is I can't do that. I'm sorry. But I can give you the equivalent by showing you how to work smarter rather than working harder. And so I'll keep up my promise here. You will get an extra couple of hours of productivity if you apply the things that we're going to talk about here. And I'm talking about not just during the workday, it's both on and off the job, 24/7. There are ways of getting a lot more productivity, not by working harder, but by working smarter. And yeah, how did I get into this? I've been in construction, I suppose, all my life. My dad was a general contractor, so I grew up in the industry. And I'm a full-time certified contractor, business coach, and entrepreneur with 25 different businesses, including a couple of residential developments that I was a general contractor. So I get the time management challenges that the folks in the trades have. I think everybody's got time management issues, but your issues are different than somebody in the corporate world or a dentist or somebody else. Okay. And so I want to narrow in on the tools and techniques that really apply to folks in the trades. Let's start off with a little quiz, and I'd like you to think about your own personal productivity. And I like to quantify things, and I'm going to ask you to rate your productivity on a scale of 1 to 10. And I know some days it's going to be higher, some days it's going to be lower, and averages are made up of extremes, but let's use a scale of 1 to 10. And with regard to your personal productivity, 1 means lousy. You don't get anything done, but you do make a lot of coffee for the guys out in the field, and you have a lot of friends. Or 10 is just perfect. I mean, just a box of fluffy ducks. I mean, you couldn't possibly get any more done. And you're wondering, what am I spending an hour with this guy? Because I'm absolutely at a 10. Or maybe it's somewhere in between. Just think about it a moment. Just kind of jot that number down on the side there. And I want you to keep that number in mind until the end of the session here, and then we'll come back to that number. I want to use that as a reference point. But I want you to think about, as you leave the session, what are some of the issues keeping you from being at a higher number? And, maybe it's being more organized, maybe it's delegating more, maybe hiring an assistant or an apprentice or whatever. And I think it was Henry Ford who suggested that a problem well-defined is 95% solved. So if your productivity is not at a 10, and there are very few people who really claim that, there's room for improvement, but identifying what are some of the issues that are keeping you from a higher number helps to lead you to implementing some and finding some solutions so that you can improve that productivity. The starting point of really good productivity is all about building a good foundation, just like building a building. If it's a bad foundation to begin with, no matter what the superstructure is, it's not going to be an effective and long-lasting building, is it? And by the same token, I think in our own lives, we need to do that as well and create a good foundation for our own personal productivity. And I say this in the context of what I've labeled are the 7 vital areas of life. And they include things like our health and family and financial and intellectual, social, professional, and spiritual areas. And I know we don't spend equal amounts of time in each one of these areas or time every single day in each area. But in the long term, if we're spending a sufficient quantity and quality of time in each and every one of these 7 vital areas, then our foundation, our lives are going to be solid. But look what happens if we mess up on any one of these. I mean, take the one, and by the way, I haven't put these in any particular order. You go ahead and reprioritize them any way you see fit. But I think the health is the one that we value the least until we don't have it anymore. And if I were to ask, and how many here can benefit from a better night's sleep, I think the hands would all go up. 3 out of 4 people complain on a regular basis that they are flat out tired. And there's a bunch of reasons for that, but here's my point. If you're flat out tired, does that affect your ability to be the good family person you want to be? Well, yeah. Does that affect your social life? Well, it sure does. Well, what if things aren't going real well in your financial life? That's going to hurt your mental health. It's going to hurt your family. It's going to hurt your focus on your professional responsibilities. And so the idea of good time management is creating balance in each and every one of those 7 vital areas. And again, that doesn't mean we're going to spend time every single day in each area or an equal amount of time. But over the long term, if we're spending a sufficient quantity and quality of time, then our lives are going to be solid. It's almost like a 7-legged table, if you will. And if all the legs are exactly the same, that table is going to be good and solid, right? But if you make one leg on the 7-legged table just a little bit longer than the rest, it's going to upset the entire table. And I think by that metaphor, that's a similar thing that what happens in our own lives. So let me just go back a bit and just give you a thought or two on each one of these. And again, I didn't put these in any particular order. Go ahead and reprioritize them any way you see fit. The first one is health, and that's the area that we sometimes value the least until it's too late. I think most people would pay anything on the last day of life to buy a few extra years of quality living, but nobody's going to be there to make the sale. This year in this country, there's going to be about 2.5 million deaths, and 2/3 of them are going to be from self-inflicted causes. And you say, Don, I didn't realize the suicide rate was that high. Well, it's not really the suicide rate, but take a look at the 5 leading causes of adult deaths by the CDC. And this is all pre-COVID stats, by the way. It should be updated for that. But the number 1 cause of death in our culture is heart disease. And where does that come from? It comes from poor diet, lack of exercise, stress, smoking. Some of it's environmental, some of it's hereditary. But you talk to any cardiologist, and they're going to tell you that 2 out of 3 heart patients, is what they're doing to themselves or failing to do it, followed by some of these other causes of death. And it seems to me, look, if personal productivity means anything, It means doing some things now, making some changes now that will increase the likelihood of having more time to manage down the road. Number two is our family dimension. How important is that? Well, I appreciate good quality time with family as much as anybody else. This year in this country, there's going to be about 2 million marriages. Isn't that nice? And there's going to be about 1 million divorces. And not only that, but up here in the Northeast, where I come from, and the greater New York area, New England and New Jersey and so on, the divorce rate in some pockets is as high as 95%. Yeah. And the number one cause of relationship breakup, and as an attorney, my life as an attorney, I've been involved in over a couple of hundred divorces, and any divorce attorney will tell you this. The number one cause of relationship breakup, and this, by the way, isn't limited just to romantic relationships, but work and boss and employee relationships and friends and everything. 95% of relationships fall apart because of a lack of communication. The American Management Association put out a study that says the average working professional, that you and I, we spend less than 2 minutes a day in meaningful communication with our spouse or significant other. And I don't know about you, but I if I don't spend, I can't even get my story out in 2 minutes a day, let alone hear what my wife Nancy did in her day. And by the way, the same study tells us that the average working professional, that you and I, we spend as little as 30 seconds a day in meaningful communication with our children. That's just a little bit more than, hey, how was school today? Yeah, okay. Did you have homework? Go do it. Well, I'll talk to you tomorrow, son. Good chat. Now you go back in time and there's that young couple standing there at the altar and they look each other in the eyes and they say, I love you, I'm going to be with you forever. And I really believe they're telling the truth, that they mean it. But as they stand there, we know that fully 50% of them, 3 and 5, 15, 20 years old, are going to be running to attorneys, acting on a whole lot of hate, and taking the fruit of that productivity and spending it on attorneys and court fees and all of that. I got a buddy of mine, he's a contractor in Dougie, and his electricity went out here a few weeks ago. He was telling me about that. He says he was sitting in the dark at night, and he says, I said, what did you do? He said, I didn't do anything. I couldn't do anything. My phone was dead. I couldn't get online. It was dark. I couldn't do anything. I said, well, you did something. What did you do for the 2 hours? He said, well, I sat and I talked to my wife. I said, well, how'd that work out? So she seems like a nice person. Number 3 is our financial dimension. And that's where we spend the bulk of our time. And we got 168 hours in our week. We take out time for sleep. Let's go with 8 hours a night, 7 nights a week. I know that's high for some and low for others, but we do spend about a third of our day dead. So now we're down to 112 hours or so. And the average person is putting in, the average contractor is putting in probably close to 60 or so other hours a week. Averages are made up of extremes, some higher, some lower. But that represents about 50% of our waking hours just to work on our financial dimension. Again, I don't mean that as a criticism, simply as an observation. But here's something that I found, and I'm going to share with you a little bit later on in the presentation. There's very little correlation between the quantity of time that we put in on anything and what the output is over here. And I'm not saying no correlation. Of course, we do have to put in some amounts of time. What does it take in terms of hours a week to be a successful mason contractor, remodeling contractor, plumber, electrician, whatever, okay? The answer is all over the place. There is no hard set rule. I mean, some are doing it 60 and 80 hours a week. Some are doing it in 30 and 40 hours a week. And I'll explain why here as we go down a few more slides here. Number 4 is our intellectual development. And, you know, up until about 10, 15 years ago, the rules were you came into this world, you learn a trade, a skill, you learned how to, and that learning kind of serviced us for a lifetime. Today, things are changing rapidly in the trades and every aspect of life. And if we don't take time to reinvest in ourselves on how to do things better, gooder, quicker, more effective, more efficiently, we're going to be left behind. Number 5 is our social dimension. How important is that? I appreciate good quality social relationships as much as anybody else. And then our professional dimension is a little bit different than our financial dimension. It's what we do financially is what we do professionally, but the professional dimension goes beyond the financial aspect of it. The professional dimension is that inner satisfaction that we get here inside of ourselves. We go home at night, we know we put some footprints in the sand, we've made a difference in somebody's life. I was coaching one of my clients yesterday. He's an electrician. He's built up his business. It's now a business, and he's running a business, and he's really dissatisfied. He's really not at all happy. He's making more money than he's ever made before. And we got into it yesterday, and the bottom line is he's not putting on the tools. He's not out there in the field. That's his passion. That's what he wants to do. Can he fix that? Of course. But do you understand, if he couldn't realize what it was and couldn't fix it, that business probably would just fritter away, okay? And then finally, our last dimension is our spiritual dimension. And I'm not focusing so much on religion, although for many of us, that's how we define it. But for some people, it's just carefully respecting one another and into our environment. Now imagine one of these days, and I do this every night as I drift off to sleep, and I kind of go through a mental summary of those 7 vital areas and just rate my performance on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 meaning perfect. And imagine in this one day, every single one of those was a 10 to your satisfaction. Oh yeah, you had tons of stuff to do, but man, you managed to squeeze out some time and go to the gym, and you have lots and lots of stuff on your plate, and but you still managed to squeeze out some time, help your daughter do homework, and take your wife out to dinner. And you had a great financial day, but more than just that, you had some time to make an appointment with a financial planner. You've been meaning to do that, and you found out some time to do some intellectual development. You still had some time to have some social time, went maybe out bowling and played tennis with some friends of yours. Great professional, great spiritual day. Every one of them was a day. What kind of a day did you just have? Man, you just had a super duper day. And that to me is the most productive person in the world. The one who can get up and say, yeah, every one of those areas is a 10. And by the way, I don't think I've ever met that person. It's more of an ideal than a reality, I think, but it's something to shoot for. You see, the idea of personal productivity is just that. It's not everybody making the same amount of money, everybody doing the same on a scale, a uniform scale. Personal productivity is just that. If you can say, I've got my each one of those areas is a 10 or it's approaching 10, my health is really where I want it, my family situation is ideal, my financial situation is just perfect, no more money would make a difference. How can anybody say you're not a productive person because you don't have a certain degree or a certain bank account? Not at all. Personal productivity is that. We get to define it through these 7 vital areas. So we look around, and there are 3 kinds of people who are kind of getting out there every day, doing their thing, and the 7 vital areas and all of that. And I kind of broke it down into three types of folks and kind of figure out where you are here. There are the busy people. And the busy people, they're the ones that are taking care of all the have-tos. Yeah, they're doing it. They're on the job. They get in the business, doing good, pass and go, not going to jail, collect $200. Nothing wrong with that at all, okay? And then there's some people that I label are the real busy people. And these are people who are going to be taking care of all the have-tos, yeah, because we have to, but they're also finding time for the want-tos. See, I think personal productivity is more than just taking care of the have-tos. It's finding the time to do the want-tos, to design a life and living life on purpose. So I call those people the real busy people. And then there are the too busy people. And we see it in the trades, we see it everywhere, okay? And the too busy people are oftentimes perceived to be the most productive, when in fact they're more likely to be the least productive, because these are the folks that are trying to get it all done. And the truth of the matter is, and this is one of the big secrets of time management I've discovered, we're never going to get it all done. We all have too much to do. And that says a lot of good things about you and I, that we have too much to do, because many have entrusted much to us. But if we have too much to do, by definition, we can't get it all done. But the too busy people are the ones who are trying to get it all done, which you can't do because we all got too much to do. They're stretched very thin. They're always running late, on the job, keeping everybody else in limbo and ruining their schedules. And they have to make a lot of apologies for the things that are slipping through the cracks, like forgotten appointments and missed deadlines. And they're always tired and not a work-life balance. And these are not people investing time, they're squandering time. if you find yourself being too busy, and I do myself from time to time, I'm reminded of this, and try to get myself back to being real busy, getting the most important things done. Not all of them, but the most important things done. To help us to do that, I encourage people to really do a good job of planning their day. You know, it's said that people don't plan to fail, but they sometimes do fail to plan. And my suggestion is to consider doing the planning for the next day the night before. If you can do it first thing in the morning, that's okay too, but I really recommend that you do it the night before. And the importance of planning comes down to that story of Alice in Wonderland. And you remember the story, and Alice is down in the, the rabbit hole, and she comes to a crossroads, and she doesn't know to go left or right. She hasn't got a map. She hasn't been there before. But up here in the tree is this big smiling Cheshire cat. So she turns to the cat for some direction, and asks, which road do I take? Do I go left? Do I go right? And the cat asks Alice a very, very important, poignant question. The cat asks Alice, what's your destination? Where are you trying to go to? And Alice, if you recall, says, well, I don't know. And the cat replies, well, then take either road. What difference does it make if you don't know where you're going? You never know when you get there. I've learned that there's no intrinsic reward in and of itself in being a contractor or being a laborer or being an attorney or being anything in life unless it's meaningful and important to you, unless it's getting to where you want to go in the first place. And so with that, my advice that I give to my clients and I share with you is the concept of writing the book of life backwards. Imagine on the day that we were all born, we were given a book under our arms, you know, and it's got 7 chapters in it for each one of those 7 vital areas. And the pages are all blank. And every day we live our lives, we're putting a page in each one of those chapters, aren't we? We're literally writing the story of our lives as we sit here now. And so the challenge that I have for you is, how do you want those chapters to end on the last day of your life? What do you want to be able to say about your health life on the last day of life? What do you want to say about your family life on the last day of your life? What do you want to say about your financial life on the last day of your life? And not where you think life will take you, or what serendipity does for me, or luck. Imagine the genie comes out of the bottle and just tell the genie what you want, and it's going to happen, okay? You do it with that kind of thought in mind, okay? And be very specific. How much money? What are you going to do with that money? And family? How old do you want to live to be? Put that in there? Yeah, put that in there. Because when we have those goals, we start to act in a way and start to make changes and start to do things that will actually manifest and bring about those things. Now, if I say I'm going to live to be 100, does that guarantee I'm going to live to be 100? No, not at all. Of course not. You run over by the bus tomorrow, but it increases the probability that I might live a little bit longer. And by the way, this is not an easy assignment. It's not a one-time thing and just do it and it's over. It's a lifetime assignment. But once you've got clarity on where you're taking this, and I like to refer to this as Me Incorporated, the most important corporation in the world, right? Once we've got clarity as where we're taking ourselves, and it's just like project management, we start off with the end in mind. We're going to build a building, right? We have a vision of what that building is and the size and location. And we start to work our way backwards, right? I mean, that's all the way down to what the next steps are. Well, the next step is we've got to go to the planning and zoning. We've got to get the architect and so on and so forth. But we start off with the vision in mind. Well, our lives is the biggest project we're ever going to have in our lives, okay? And the good thing about our project is we can change it all the time. I mean, we start off building a building, and we're kind of stuck with what that vision is, I mean, by and large. But we can always change it and move along because it's not changeable in granite, okay? But here's the deal. Once you've got clarity of where you're going in each one of those 7 vital areas, then you start to work your way backward to figure out what it is you got to do each year, each month, each week, and literally each day in order to get there. Because the bragging rights to a nice story on the last day of life, that doesn't come to us based on what we do the last 3 days of our lives. It's what we're doing every single day of our lives. So that now the choices on how we spend our time, once we have that clarity, it becomes a no-brainer. I mean, there's no question in my mind what I'm going to be doing tomorrow, first thing tomorrow morning. That's 24 hours from now. when I know where I'm going, there's no question in my mind right now what I'm going to be doing first thing on Saturday, my next day off. What is it, 4 or 5 days away now? First thing in the morning, I know right now where I'm going. But if I don't know where I'm going, and a lot of people don't, because they haven't been shared with this kind of technique, okay, then what we do is we work hard. And that, by the way, was the traditional definition of productivity up until like 100 or so years ago. And for good reason, because up until about 100 years ago, we were an agrarian culture, and we worked the land for survival, and hard work had a place, and that was a definition. The harder you work, the more you value productivity you had, more crops and all of that. But now today, working harder, I've got to work as hard as anybody else, but we're working harder than anybody else on the planet, according to the U.S. Department of Labor. So we got to start thinking about working smarter rather than working harder. And so each night in daily planning, I make up my plan of action and I build on my to-do list for the next day. And I have it include not only my have-tos, but my want-tos. And in a sense, I'm becoming kind of like a cattle rancher. I like that metaphor. Imagine there's a cattle rancher. He's got 100 head of cattle, but there's no fencing. And the cattle go wherever they want to go. And at this particular juncture, he really doesn't know how many head of cattle he's got. I mean, some are here, some are around the ridge, and he thinks he's got 100. And by the way, where does he spend his time? He spends his time with the calf of the cow that's in his face, bleeding. Take me first. The customer says, take me first. I'm the most important person in the world. To the distraction of the calf of the cow that's around the ridge in a creek or something that'll drown if he doesn't attend to that. Well, that's not a good way to be a cattle rancher. So what does he do? He builds a corral. He gets his arms around it. They say in management, you want to manage it, you got to measure it. You got to get your arms around it. And by doing this book of life and building in now an inventory of all the things that you have to or want to, okay, there's your cattle ranch. And now you pick from that the most important have-tos and want-tos in building your to-do list for the next day. And what this does is it forces, it creates us to focus in on the more important things. We may not get them all done, but we'll get the most important things done, and the things we're not getting done are moved over to the next day, and maybe we'll get them done then. But it also helps to reduce our stress. And stress is a huge factor in the trades. That's no secret. We all know about that. My God, the scheduling, the sub didn't show up. Where's the concrete? And the electric company hasn't put the power back on. I can't move forward and do the installations and all. I understand that. Difficulty in finding help and all that, financing, all of this sort of thing. Yeah, there's a lot of stress. But here's what it comes down to. We can't eliminate all stress, of course, but we can eliminate some of this by doing some of this planning, because stress is basically caused by having expectations about the way life should go, and reality that falls short of that. When we have an expectation that things should go a certain way and reality falls short of that, we get a thing called a disappointment, and that builds in a little stress, doesn't it? And so, the concrete guy didn't show up but for an hour later. Okay, we get a little stress over that. And if that was the only thing we had to deal with during the day, then our lives would be just peachy, right? But you add a dozen and hundreds of these things over and over and again, it really starts to add up. So without doing the formal planning that I've outlined, a lot of people have in their head expectations about what should happen during their day, sort of their mental have-to list and want-to list. And at the end of the day, the reality is that they didn't accomplish so much of it, and they feel the stress of it. By doing this planning process, you tend to minimize that. You tend to bring expectation and reality in line with one another, more so on what you're going to do for the next day by doing the planning the night before. And you also get to take advantage of Parkinson's law by doing this planning. And I'm having said that, we're not going to get it all done, and because we have too much to do, I am in favor of over planning our day just a little bit, and to avoid over planning our day, which is really self-defeating. But if we can over plan our day just a little bit, and I recommend over planning the day by about 50%. Giving yourself about 50% more than you can comfortably handle, and that'll create a healthy sense of pressure on us. Because Parkinson's law says in part that a project tends to expand with the time allocated for it, which simply says if you give yourself only one thing to do during the day, it'll take all day. If you give yourself two things to do during the day, you get 2 done. If you give yourself a dozen things to do during the day, maybe you don't get 12 done, but you get 9 done, because having a lot to do, you tend to be more focused. You tend to not suffer unnecessary interruptions. You're better at delegating if possible. You're not wasting time in dopey, unproductive meetings. And you just sort of automatically become a bit more productive through that planning process. As we look at all the different things on our list, we break them down into the things that are really crucial, that really put the cheese on the pizza in terms of productivity. And then there are things that are not so crucial, and the tendency that we have is to, even though we all want to be good time managers, is we have a tendency to wind up on the not so crucial side. And for this reason, typically those non-crucial items are, we're driven, by the way, more so by emotion than logic. Logic says we ought to be over here on the crucial side, but we're driven more by emotion, aren't we? And in the not so crucial items are typically more quick and fun, as opposed to the really crucial items, which are typically more long and difficult. It's a difference between business and doing busyness, progress versus wheel spinning. Everybody's experienced this. You've been busy the whole day long, and you come home at night and you know you didn't accomplish a darn thing. Right? It's probably because you got caught up in this side of the equation, okay? So we need kind of a system to kind of focus in on the priorities. And I have it for you on a little A, B, C, and D system. A little dot as a quickie. So in my planning process, I'll make up my to-do list for the next day, drawing on that inventory of have-tos and want-tos. I'll overplan my day by about 50%. And then I'll go down the list, and I want to identify the A items, the items that are really crucial. These are the ones that are really going to add to my productivity, and both on and off the job. And I'll identify those items. The B items are important items, but if I have a choice to work on an A item or a B item, I obviously want to work on the A item. A C item is, if it's on the list, it has minimal value. Chances are I won't get to my C items today, but that's okay, because everything else by definition is going to be more valuable. And then finally, D stands for no value. And you say, well, Don, how would I find a D on my list? I'll tell you, if you haven't been through this process of just kind of going through this analysis and, is it really crucial? Is it important? You may find you've been carrying around some D items. Yeah, it has no value at all. Get it off the list. And then you have that expectation that you should be doing it, and the reality is you're not going to do it anyway. So it becomes a stressor. And then finally, a little star dot is just for a quickie item. I mean, I got to make a quick call to somebody, the architect, got to call the bank or whatever. It's just a small kind of a thing, do an email. I'm not going to sit there and say, is this an A to send this email? No, it's a B, or it could be a C. If it's going to take me a minute, I mean, it'd take me 2 minutes to figure out if it's an A, B, or a C. So I just use it as a quickie. I typically have 4 or 5 of those on my list, and I'll do them first thing in the morning, give myself kind of a jump start for the day. That's my to-do list. The other side of what I need to manage, we all need to manage, is our appointments and scheduled events. And I like to use a month at a glance calendar, so I kind of get to see the big picture. And by having everything all together, and I put everything in my personal life, my business life, because we are who we are 24/7. But that month at a glance gives us the opportunity to see how things mix together in context with one another. In context with our own personalities. For example, some of us are racehorses, some of us are tortoises. A racehorse is somebody who thrives over the overload and the galloping horse, if you will. And the tortoise is somebody who likes to move in a very measured way. And racehorses and tortoises accomplish just as much, they just do it differently, okay? So if I have 3 appointments, 4 appointments, I'm going to schedule this week, because I'm kind of like a racehorse. I might want to bunch them all together on Monday. And yet my tortoise friend over here, they may have the 5 appointments for the week, but 5 all in one day, that just drives them crazy. They'll make an appointment for 1 on Monday, 1 on Tuesday, and kind of spread it out. By the end of the week, we both accomplish the same thing. Most of us have a financial budget. That makes sense, because we don't have unlimited amounts of cash, and we don't want to run out of money on Thursday and not be able to buy bread for Friday, right? Well, what's a more precious resource? Is it our money, or is it our time? I submit it's our time, because where does money come from but the way in which we use our time? So think of our time as like a time budget, okay? It's like a financial budget. we got $168 a week, which is 168 hours. You got to take out for taxes. All right, that's called sleep time. Take out, say, 56 hours. And now we're down to about 110, 112 hours. And there's just stuff that you know is going to happen. I mean, the have to stuff, you have to go to work, and maybe you have other things that are just part of the routine. So take that out of out of there. And then what you do, what you have left over is what we call discretionary time. So when I do my time budget, and I do it almost every Sunday, looking forward to the week coming up. Start off with 168 hours. I take out 56 hours for sleep, and that brings me down to 112 hours. I do an hour and a half of exercise. That's 10 hours. That just comes out of there. My work schedule, that's about 45, 50 hours. I take that out, the appointments that I already have. And then I'm left over what I call discretionary time. And for most people, it's 20, 30, maybe even 40 hours a week, because our weeks are broken down roughly in about a third and a third and a third. About a third, roughly speaking, is to take care of our physical self, sleep, and so on, maybe a little bit more. Another third, working 40, 50 hours a week, if you will. It's a little bit more, maybe, roughly about a third to pay our bills. But then a third, roughly 30 or 40 hours, maybe a little bit short, is discretionary time. And so when I take a look at that discretionary time, and I ask myself, going through each one of those 7 vital areas, Don, at the end of the next week, next Sunday, when the time's already been spent and the horse is out of the barn, how much time over and above the usual stuff do you want to spend in family? And I get to make the choice. How much do you want to stay in family and health and financial and intellectual and social and all that? And I just sort of plug those things in there. And it's really amazing if you create an appointment yourself, as silly as it sounds, how it really can help make it to happen. There's a couple of time thieves, though, that are out there, and they delight in stealing time from you. And we've got to arrest these guys and put them away here. One of them is our inability to say no. And here's the context. When you and I were born, we were given 2 rules. And rule number 1 is you had to get it all done. You had to drink all the milk, you had to eat all your food, and it carried over to later time. You had to do your homework, and you had to do your practice for your coach, and you had a lot of stuff you had to do because you didn't know anything when you came into this planet. And the second rule is that you had to say yes. You had to say yes to everything because you don't know enough to say no. Okay, so that's how we got to age 18. And now it's your 18th birthday. Do you remember that? And everybody showed up. And your aunt from Philadelphia, who you didn't like, she showed up, but she gave you a check for $50, and now you like her. And after you opened up all the cards and everything, in the bottom there was this little brown envelope. Do you remember that? And you opened it up, and oh, you didn't get it? Oh yeah, a lot of people didn't get it. Yeah, because the government was supposed to send it out. So I guess they kind of screwed it up. That was a new memo. Once you turn 18, those rules that guided you through your youth to bring you to age 18 were no longer in force. The old rules were you have to say yes to everything, listen to everything, your mother, teachers, and all of that. You can't say no. And you had to get it all done. Now those rules are out the window. Because now in your grown-up years, you and I, as we grow older, we have too much to do. It says great things about you and I. And by definition, we're never going to get it all done. So rule in the new rule, as we turn 18, is we're not going to get it all done. The new rule is we want to get the most important things done. And number 2, you do have a right to say no. And no doesn't always have to be no, but when you're not unable to say no, when you're saying yes to something you don't want to do, you're saying no to something that you really want to do, okay? And if we're going to be effective time managers, we have to get away from allocating our time solely on the basis of those who demand it, because the demands outstrip the supply. Instead, we have to allocate our time on the basis of those who deserve it. And I don't mean this in any kind of an arrogant look. You don't deserve it. You're too unimportant. No. It's just I have a small amount of time. We all do. And if we never say no, it's like that song, you know, if we don't stand for something, we fall for everything. And no doesn't always have to be no. It can be, look, I'm sorry, that's not a priority with me right now. Look, I can't do it now, but I can do it a week from now or something like that. And look, I don't think I can get to it, but I know someone over here who can help you here. But again, if you're never in a position where you can't say no, you're always saying yes. There's an article that I wrote on this, and you can get it from my, it's on my website, or just, I'll give you my email at the end, and shoot me an email. And it's called Just Say No. And it's about 10 or 15 fun ways of actually saying no and having the cooperation of other people. Another thief is having too many choices. My roommate in college loved books, and he'd go out every week and buy a new business book and put it on a shelf up in front of his desk in the dorm room. And in 3 years, he never read a book. It was crazy. And I swear, if there was a rule in the state that said you couldn't buy a second book until you read the first book, you'd have read a lot of books. So Albert Einstein says, you know, option paralysis is indecision in the face of too many choices. Sometimes our own vocabulary is a big thief. And it's the phrase, someday I'll get my E2, someday I'll go out of my own business, someday I'll, whatever. Someday I'll is that myth we tell ourselves that it's almost like a destination. It's like this island in the South Pacific. Someday I'll, when I get over my hump, you know, because when you get over your hump, there'll be another hump. There always is a hump, one challenge after the other. But yeah, as soon as I get over my hump, I'm going to get on an airplane and fly to someday I'll, and then all my dreams will be there, because that's ridiculous. It doesn't exist. I had a client that asked me one time, he was separated from his wife, but had liver visitation with his 4-year-old daughter. And he said, knowing what you know about my situation, my goal, my want is, I want to take her on vacation this summer. What's your advice to make sure that I can take my 4-year-old on vacation this summer? And I thought about it for a moment, and I said, you have to take her on vacation when she's 4 years old. I don't want to make this stuff complex. I mean, that's the bottom, that's it. That's all there is to it. There's only one way to tell your 70-year-old mother that you love her. You got to tell her when she's 70 years old. And if you don't take a 4-year-old on vacation, that's okay. You can take a 5-year-old, but you never have a second shot of it. I hope you're getting something too of the urgency of this idea of managing our time, not a panic or anything, but today's not the first day of the rest of our lives. I know some of us have that on their wall. I used to have that, and that always kind of leads to, no, yeah, I can always get to tomorrow, until we run out of the tomorrows. I got a thing on my wall that says that today is the last day of my life. I don't mean that literally, but I mean, it creates some sort of an urgency. Here's another big one, and now you hear it all the time. I didn't have time to, and you get to fill in the blank, right? When somebody says that to me, you know, you didn't have time. What, did you brush your teeth today? Well, yeah. Did you eat? Oh, yeah, I had to. Did you get dressed? Of course I did. I had to do. No, you didn't. You didn't have to do anything. Now, there are consequences. Of course, you got stinky breath. Nobody's going to sit next to you. But there are choices, okay? And the truth of the matter is, everybody's got the same amount of time. And if you say, I didn't have time to read my book last night, if somebody on the planet, there's over 7 billion people, if somebody read a book last night, they all had the same amount of time, that proves that it was there. They just made a different choice. And here's what it really comes down to. So many people have come to my training, my coaching, with the idea that they are where they are in their lives because of their circumstances. Oh, you don't understand the parents I had, the education I had or didn't have, or, oh yeah, you guys up north, you got it really, oh, that's great, but down here it's different, And therefore, I'm a byproduct of my circumstances. And friends, what I've learned and what I share with my clients is your circumstances don't make you, by and large. Yes, there's serendipity, there's luck, I know that. But ideally, and in substance, your circumstances reveal you. Because ultimately what it all comes down to is life is a series of choices. Choices that we make or fail to make or allow others to make for us. But how do we make those choices on how we spend our time unless we understand where we're going in the first place? So maybe we should have the book of life and do the planning and start to build it in and turn that around. Another thief is we get caught up in the insoluble problem loop, and every problem has one of 3 solutions, and that's it. You can either fix it, you can accept it or tolerate it, or you can leave it. And here's what happened. As an attorney, I did a lot of work with divorces over the years. And folks are coming to me for number 3. They just want to leave it. Poor me, I'm Mr. Time Management. I can't resist that, doing my little sharing of time management techniques. And I said, why don't we think about fixing it first? And I gave them some people would be willing to kind of go ahead and do that, or maybe they want to kind of relook at the whole situation and accept it. So, and maybe they can tolerate things aren't all that bad and leave it as kind of the last resolution. But here's how a lot of people get caught up in this circle here. And so I want to leave my husband. And well, you have to go to court. Well, you got to go to court. That's going to cost money. No, he's going to have to change his behavior. No, he's not going to do it. Well, can you accept it? No, I can't accept it. Well, then you have to leave it. Well, no, I don't want to leave it. And go around and around and around, and the thing never gets solved. Be decisive. The road of life is paved with flat squirrels who couldn't make a decision, right? Telephone tag, boy, you want to get caught up in that. Let's set the rules and the expectations. When I advise my clients as contractors, when you're starting a project with a new customer, a new client, set up the rules of engagement. Here's how to reach me. When you call and leave a message, I will call back, and this is the best time to reach me, and so on. When you're doing a telephone tag situation, don't spill all the beans. If you're trying to get a call back from them, leave a specific date and time when you're going to call again. And then finally, let's talk a bit about your marketing, your sales processes, because as contractors, that's what it's all about. Marketing is the idea of getting in front of those who need and want what you have, and the sales process is closing the deal. And I want to show you something that I share with my clients about how to literally, with very small adjustments, of how contractors can, in all businesses for that matter, can literally double their revenue. So here's how it all works for all businesses. Okay, it starts off with, to get new business, you're going to be putting out bids or RFPs or proposals, or however you want to catalog that, okay? So you go out and you're bidding all these jobs, okay? Do all of those turn into business? No, of course not. Your closing ratio for most of us, there might be some exceptions for everything. Maybe you do close 100% of them. But in the trades, I know that on average, the closing ratio across the board is about 20%. It might be higher for you. That's good, or lower, but I'm just using that as an example, okay? But whatever the closing ratio is, that gets the jobs that you have, and then the value of each job, all right, creates the revenue. All right, so let's put some numbers to that. And let's say, for example, that our case study over here, this contractor is doing 100 bids, RFPs, proposals, whatever, each week, each month, each year, some period of time, okay? And their closing ratio is 20%. Your fee is too high, it's through this, whatever, and any number of reasons. We all know that, right? The point is they get 20 jobs, okay, over this period of time, whether it's a week, a month, a year, whatever, okay? And let's just say, for the sake of example, that the average value of a job is $1,000, and maybe that's gross revenue or net profit, however you wanted to do it, okay? So that produces the revenue of $20,000, okay? So far, so good. So how about if we juggle those around? Making great changes in anything in life doesn't require wholesale changes. It's like a horse race. The first horse gets $50,000 as a purse. The second horse in a race gets, say, 25. What is it? Why does the first horse get twice as much money? It isn't because he runs twice as far, twice as fast, twice as long. He's just a nose ahead of the competition. So let's apply that same principle, and let's take those same numbers and let's improve them on say, just 13%. Get 13%, a few more proposals. Increase the closing ratio by 13%. Increase the value of each job by 13%. Maybe some add-ons or warranties, or any number of different things, all right? Now watch what happens. Instead of 110, now there's 113 proposals. But now your closing ratio, you get better at that. You learn some techniques on how to do that, how to do value pricing, and how to get into what's really in the buyer's mind, and getting them to close and getting them to embrace you. So now you're closing 33%, we'll say. Well, if you got 113 opportunities, now you get 37 sales. And let's say we've increased the value of each job by just 13%. So instead of $1,000, it's $1,130. And 37 times 1130, you've gone from you've gone from $20,000 to $41,000. Not by working any harder, not by working, but by working smarter. That's what personal productivity is all about. So with that, time is about to run out, and you guys are going to run out too, but we want to take some time for some questions. And James, do we see something coming up in the chat, and you can field them? And
Absolutely. I've been keeping my eyes out for them and kind of typing answers as you've been going there. Someone asked about the being able to go back and view this later, and we will send out this recording to you guys later if you need to look at it later. Not a problem at all there. So hopefully that answers that, but that's the only main question that we've gotten. Does anyone have anything else?
well, I got a question for you. And by the way, this is my website, and go ahead and visit there. There's a ton of resources on there, articles and the like that you can access. It's all free, and there's actually a stress test on there you can take, and that as you take the test, it'll interpret the results so you can see how screwed up you are. And I hope you'll join me on LinkedIn and be a linky with me, and we'll have our mutual network enhanced. This is my direct line. And I want to go back to that productivity score that I asked you to do when we started off. Rate your productivity on a scale of 1 to 10. And if your score was 8 or less, there's something that we need to talk about. And I'd invite you to give me a call. Let's set up a quick Zoom. It's complimentary. Does it lead to a professional relationship? Maybe, yes, sometimes it does. But that's not the point here. Most of the time it doesn't. I'm just glad to help out.
Absolutely, guys. And everything that Don talked about here today is so relevant to what we do as accountants and bookkeeping and everything there is what can you do as a business owner to reduce your stress, reduce what you need to do, and or delegate your tasks. So I want you to think the same thing here. If your productivity score was 8 or less, let's take a look, not just at your productivity score, but your comfort level with how much time you're spending doing your books or your comfort in how your books are done. If you're less than an 8, it's a perfect, we want to talk with you. We want to make sure that we get you above that 8, whether it's just a complimentary consultation that we do, or we find other options for you. That's always our goal, is to make sure that you guys are as comfortable as possible with exactly what your numbers and what your business says, along with your productivity, which is why we brought Don in today to talk with y'all. So I think that is everything. I'm not seeing any other questions come in, guys.
James, I would just add one thought on that. The importance of having a good bookkeeping service on your team is absolutely critical. But you folks, I hope you recognize that James and Watford Business Solutions is not just a bookkeeping service. They're a whole host, a menu of business solutions. And I have no qualms at all about recommending his whole approach to this whole bookkeeping task. It's more than just the bookkeeping, and he's an important team member. You didn't go into the business to do bookkeeping and all the things that James can help you with. You got into the business to do the business, put the tools on, and go out there in the field. And with that, I just want to thank James and Waterford Business Solutions for thinking enough of you guys that they would invite me here to do this presentation. And I wish you a super duper productive day. Otherwise, what's the point?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, guys. Y'all enjoy your day. And if you come up with questions afterwards, please feel free to email Don, or we'll send out an email later on today with the recording and everything for y'all. And you're more than welcome to email us, and we can definitely reach out to Don and get those questions answered for you guys. So y'all have a wonderful rest of your day. Um, and we look forward to helping y'all in any way that either Don or I can.